the most dominant player on tour, just won 5 consecutive Masters 1000 titles without dropping a set. Then lost 18 consecutive points to a man ranked 56th in the world. The narrative says Paris Heat. The data says something older. And Darren Cahill already told us what it was. This is not a hot take built around a highlight reel. This is a pattern documented, trackable, and hiding in plain sight across 2 years of public statements that nobody in tennis media has bothered to connect. Let's talk about the mechanism first. Sinner's dominance is not built on weapons. It's built on a system of relentlessness. He stands 3 feet inside the baseline. He takes the ball early on the rise before opponents can reset their positioning. His cross-court backhand generates pace off pace, meaning the harder you hit at him, the more dangerous his reply becomes. His kill zone is rallies between 4 and 8 shots, where his flat ball compression forces errors before fatigue even enters the equation. The one condition that must be true for this system to function: Sinner must be physically present. His game does not have a plan B for when his legs go. When the engine drops, the system collapses, not gradually, suddenly, and we've seen it before, not hypothetically, not in a minor 250. At Roland Garros 2026, leading 6-3, 6-2, 5-1. A single game from the third round, Sinner lost 18 of the final 20 games. Cerundolo, who had won fewer than 3 games in either of the first 2 sets, claimed the match 3-6, 2-6, 7-5, 6-1, 6-1. That arithmetic is not weather. That arithmetic is total physical system failure. Here is the crack. And it's specific. The way Sinner's game is built. He absorbs enormous energy output during the first 4 to 6 shots of every rally. He's loading up pace, compressing the ball, dictating position. On hard courts, where rallies resolve quickly, this is sustainable across 2 weeks. On clay, where rallies extend, where opponents get a second and third look at the ball, where recovery time between shots compresses under heat, Sinner's energy expenditure per point is dramatically higher than his baseline. When he is 100% physically resourced, this costs him nothing. When his body enters a match already carrying a deficit, illness, depletion, disrupted sleep, the first 2 sets mask it because the adrenaline holds. Then it doesn't. That is exactly what happened at Philippe Chatrier, and it mirrors something precise in tennis history. This pattern matches what happened to Roger Federer during the 2008 Australian Open, when Federer entered the tournament managing the tail end of mononucleosis. He won 3 rounds dominating, then hit the wall against Novak Djokovic in the semifinals, an opponent he had owned for years. Within 18 months, that physical fragility became the crack Nadal and Djokovic exploited on clay for the better part of a decade. A player whose system demands physical perfection cannot absorb accumulated cost the way a grinder can. Sinner's situation is not identical, but the shape of it is. And here's what nobody is connecting yet. Darren Cahill said it out loud in an ESPN interview after the 2024 US Open. He described watching Sinner through the doping affair and said there was a big change in his body language, his physicality on court, and his excitement to be on the court. He watched Sinner get sick repeatedly, missed the Olympics with tonsillitis. He described the entire period as wearing his player down physically and mentally. That was 2024. The 2025 season saw Sinner win 6 titles, but go only 11-2 on clay, his lowest clay win percentage since 2021. In 2026, coming into Roland Garros, he swept Monte Carlo, Madrid, and Rome across 3 consecutive weeks. 3 weeks of maximum output, clay season physicality, deep emotional investment, and then Paris. The tank was not empty. The tank had been slowly draining since March 2024. Consider the psychological layer. After the 2025 Roland Garros final, the longest in the tournament's history, a match Sinner led by 2 sets before losing, Cahill said he's never going to get over it. A match like that stays with you forever. Notice what Cahill is describing. Not tactical regret. Emotional weight that lives in the body. That kind of unresolved competitive grief creates physiological tension that compounds under pressure. When Sinner arrived in Paris this year, he was not just trying to win Roland Garros. He was trying to exercise 2025. The nervous system knows the difference. Now, here's the honest case against this thesis. Sinner's 2026 clay record before Roland Garros was 18-1. He won Monte Carlo, Madrid, and Rome consecutively, without dropping a set across the entire Masters 1000 series. You could look at that and say the physical fragility narrative is simply a bad day story, that every player at the top of the sport gets one illness-affected loss per season, that Cerundolo played the match of his life and deserves more credit than this analysis gives him. All of that is true, but here's why I hold the position. Sinner's physical breakdowns cluster specifically on clay, specifically in extended matches, and specifically in the tournaments that carry the highest emotional weight. That is not random variance. That is a stress fracture with a pattern. Now let's zoom out. What we are watching is not a bad day for the world number one. We are watching the tennis equivalent of a structural load test. Sinner's system was engineered for indoor hard courts, controlled conditions, short points, low humidity. Clay is the stress test that reveals what the hard court dominance conceals. And the same dynamic is unfolding on the other side of the net. Carlos Alcaraz, built on clay, increasingly fragile on hard courts under extended load. Two different systems, two different cracks, the same era. The question this generation is asking and has not yet answered is which system breaks first under the weight of a full career Grand Slam pursuit. Now imagine this scenario. Wimbledon 2026. Sinner has had 5 weeks to recover. He arrives physically restored, emotionally reset, as the clear number one seed on a surface where his flat ball and early ball timing are even more lethal than on hard. He meets Alcaraz in the final. Alcaraz entering on a wrist injury recovery. Sinner wins in 4 sets. He arrives at the US Open in August, carrying 1 defeat on the year, under documented illness conditions on clay. The narrative has already flipped. From is Sinner cracking to is Sinner the greatest hardcourt player of his era? That swing in perception from Paris to New York is the rivalry plot point that defines this generation. The numbers make the trajectory visible. Sinner entered 2026 with a 37-3 record and 29-0 at Masters 1000 level before Roland Garros, the first man in history to win 5 consecutive Masters titles without dropping a set. His clay win rate this season was 18-1 before Paris. The single loss came under documented illness conditions, following the most compressed clay schedule of his career. Compare that to Novak Djokovic at 24, who went 29-3 on clay in 2011, absorbing 2 Roland Garros losses under compressed schedules before finally claiming the title in 2016. These are not random fluctuations. These are the fingerprints of a player entering the highest pressure phase of a career Grand Slam pursuit. So here's my prediction, and I'm being specific. Jannik Sinner wins at least 1 Grand Slam title before the end of 2026, and the US Open, in conditions built for his system, becomes the moment the Roland Garros collapse is reframed as the price he paid for the most dominant clay schedule in the history of the Masters 1000 series. Not a feeling, a documented call. We came into this talking about a collapse. 18 points, a ranked 56 Argentine, the biggest upset at Roland Garros since 2000. What we've actually traced is something more precise, a player whose system demands total physical availability, carrying 3 years of accumulated cost from a doping affair that his own coach described publicly, in real words, as breaking him mentally and physically. The Paris heat did not break Jannik Sinner. The Paris heat revealed what was already under strain. And if you watch Wimbledon with that lens, you'll see what happens when a player of this caliber comes back with something to prove. Remember where you heard it first. Because we don't chase narratives here. We build them from the ground up.